So for a lot of people, there's this perception that in order to get a very, very nice phone, you have to spend a lot of money, in some cases well over $1,000. But the truth is that you can get a great smartphone from just a couple years ago that was the flagship device of that year. Meet the Google Pixel 3. Now, this is the standard Google Pixel 3, not the 3A, not the XL, none of that stuff. This particular phone I managed to get used secondhand in great condition for only $60. $60. I'm not kidding. And not only is this a great phone for the price, but this is one of the best, if not the best. In fact, I'm going to say it right now. This is the best deal that you can get on a smartphone. Because at least the seller that I saw this from on eBay was selling this for only $59.99. And this is the Google Pixel 3. Now, I had to buy the case separately, of course, but the phone itself, 60 bucks. 60 bucks. And at the time they had it in every color, so you can get this phone in just black, classic white, or not pink. I went with the not pink color, which has this very nice orange power button. The white is also a great color as well because that has the mint colored power button, which I love, and you can get the black color as well, although that color does tend to have some issues with this back glass scratching, but as long as you're careful with it or you wear a case, it shouldn't matter. So, this Google Pixel 3 was the flagship Google phone from 2018, and it was paired along with the Google Pixel 3 XL. So, like I mentioned, this is the smaller Pixel 3, so it will be closer in size to smaller phones. So, for example, here I have an LG G5, and we can see it's about the same size, although since this is a modern phone, it's a little bit more narrow. It has the 18:9 aspect ratio that we've come to know and love from modern smartphones, so there's nothing out of the ordinary there in terms of feeling modern. Now, in the case of the Pixel 3, you actually do get a fingerprint sensor, which is missing on a lot of the newer Pixels. And we do have the fingerprint sensor gestures as well as a result, so we can swipe on the fingerprint sensor to pull down the notification shade, or we can just swipe down on the home screen and swipe up for our apps. Now, when I got this phone was on Android 11, and it upgraded itself to Android 12, actually against my will and against my consent, which I'm not really happy about. But if you like the new Android 12 design language and you like this whole scenario, the Pixel 3 upgrades to Android 12. In fact, if you buy one now, it'll probably already have it installed, but it just depends on where you get it from and however long the previous owner used it. So you have, this whole UI and everything, and a lot of people have complained about the display brightness on the Pixel 3, and I actually haven't found it to be too much of an issue. Now, it still doesn't get as bright as I'd like, and I do find that when I'm outside, I have to max out the brightness, but it is tolerable. I can read this in direct sunlight, and the display does get dim enough to where if I'm, laying in bed and I'm wanting to do some reading or something without disturbing, anybody else or my eyes, this definitely does do that just fine. So the display is excellent on this. It is Quad HD to my knowledge. I actually haven't looked, but I'm pretty sure it's Quad HD. It certainly looks Quad HD. And like I mentioned, it is that tall aspect ratio that a lot of new phones have. There is no notch and there's no hole punch. Now, if you get the 3XL, you will have a very, very big notch, but the small Pixel 3 does not have that problem. The small Pixel 3 looks excellent. You have these symmetrical borders on both the top and the bottom, and you have the dual front-facing speakers, and the speakers on this are really good. They're actually better than the Galaxy Note 10 Plus that I tested not too long ago. So, very happy about that. The speaker experience on this is great, and the display is beautiful too. Sure, some people may prefer to be a bigger screen, but if you're of that mindset, you can easily get the Pixel 3 XL for a little bit more money. The Pixel 3 XL, I've seen them for around potentially around $100. The Pixel 3 XL does hold its value a little bit more than the Pixel 3 does because a lot of people prefer bigger phones, but in my case, I got a Pixel 3, and this screen has no burn-in, it's perfect, there's no issues with it, and also these motion wallpapers are really nice as well. So I've actually been using the Google Stock Launcher, and it's been working really well. I haven't had any problems with it. My fiance also used this phone for a brief period of time whenever his iPhone was having some issues, and he had no problems with it either. So that's excellent. So if you have any, I don't know if that sentence was supposed to be. Let me rephrase that. So if you're used to using modern phones and you go back to the Pixel 3, even though this only has 4 gigabytes of RAM, this still feels plenty fast and plenty snappy. And there's plenty of other phones I've used with 4 gigabytes of RAM that feel way slower than this does. And this, honestly, I can use this alongside my Note 9 with a SIM card in each phone, and I do not feel like I'm missing a beat from switching between the two, which is good because they came out at the same time. Now, one other thing where you're not missing a beat with is the camera. The camera on this is excellent. Now, the Pixel is known for having great cameras, and I personally feel like my Note 9 has a little bit better of a video camera, but it is very close. Now, of course, you don't get any sort of secondary lens, so you only have the one main camera lens. You don't have a telephoto or a wide angle. I really wish it had a wide angle, but hey, it does the trick. And the main camera is incredibly good. So if I want to take a picture of this right here, just point and shoot. Don't have to mess with any of these settings, but you do have them as well. So just press that and click, and there we go. So the picture quality, for some reason it's... Okay, there we go. It looks great. So this is my LG G5, and you can see it's looking very crispy on the Pixel 3. So no complaints there. This looks excellent. And if you're the kind of person where you want a really good camera on your phone, this is hands down the best deal you can get on a camera right now, bar none. I do not care. This is the best camera out of any phone that you can get in 2019 for a point-and-shoot camera, or 2018. Well, I guess 2018 going into 2019. And considering that, you're not going to get any other 2018 or 2019 flagship for the price of this Pixel, so that alone makes this a winner. But especially if you compare this to some of the phones that you would get for 60 bucks, those cameras are trash compared to the Pixel 3. And even if you get a great deal on a Samsung phone that tends to hold its value, like if you get an S7 or S7 Edge for 60 bucks, sometimes you can find a standard Galaxy S7 or S7 Edge for 60 bucks. This camera beats the crap out of the S7. And if you think of any other phone that you could get for that price, I mean, you know, for a couple dollars less, you can get a Galaxy S3. Like, come on, that's a joke. You know, even this LG G5 I got for $40. Come on, the camera on this G5 is trash, but that might be because my camera lens is scratched up. But the difference between these two is night and day. This is going to be the best camera that you can get in a phone. So if you are on a strict budget, like right now, like stop what you're doing. If you're on a strict budget right now, and you have maybe 60, maybe 80 bucks to spend on a phone, because presumably you're going to want to get a case too. If you have that much to spend on a phone and you want a good camera, buy this phone. There's no other way to say it. Like, I'm not going to waste your time and say, oh, this is the best option you can get. And I've been very happy with this experience with the Pixel 3 camera-wise. So the camera on this is a go. It's fantastic. It's definitely one of the best that you can get for the price range. Again, it's the best you can get for the price range. There's no $60 phone that I'm aware of that can beat the Pixel 3. If you know of one, if you know of a phone that you can get for 60 bucks that has a better camera than the Pixel 3, drop it in the comments, because I want to hear it. I want to believe it. But right now, I don't believe it. The Pixel 3 has the best camera in any phone for $60, even $80, even potentially $100 if you want the XL. And I'll review the XL at a later date. But for now, this is the normal Pixel 3 because the price delta is pretty severe. So, camera, excellent. Display, excellent. Speakers, excellent. I do notice that, similar to what I had with my Note 10 Plus, if I turn the volume all the way up, I notice the bottom speaker rattles the slightest bit, but it's incredibly minuscule, and it's not enough to actually cause any problems. And I'm very rarely actually listening to this at full volume anyways, so that is great. So speakers on this are excellent, front-facing speakers, very nice. Now, if we take a look around the phone, we have our SIM card tray down here at the bottom. Now, this phone, of course, is 2018, so it's not going to support 5G, but you can't expect that for the price. Come on, be reasonable. And this SIM card tray does not offer any sort of expandable memory, unfortunately, so you are not going to have any way to expand the memory. Now, this particular phone that I got is the base model, which is 64 gigabytes, which to me is the bare minimum of any storage amount today. So honestly, that's not too bad. I mean, 64 gigabytes is certainly passable. There is a 128 gigabyte variant of this as well. Unfortunately, there's no 256 or anything like that. And Google has removed the ability to get unlimited photo storage on Google Photos because Google sucks. And Yeah, so you're not going to get that. And that really sucks for me because I used to use Google Photos all the time, but they got rid of it. So now I can't. I basically have to delete all my videos once I record them. So Pixel 3 is perfectly fine in terms of storage. If you want a ton of storage, if you're wanting 256 or more gigabytes of storage and local storage, then this phone is not going to be for you because it just can't do it. Because there's no SD card slot, and that's 128 gigs is as far as the storage goes, to my knowledge. So that unfortunately is not good, and you're going to have to make do with that. But 128 gigs is perfectly sufficient, and even 64 gigs is tolerable. If I was buying this as my main phone, then I would get the XL in 128, because my Note 9 is 128, so downgrading would kind of suck considering there's also no card slot. But 128 gigs is definitely, I can certainly live with that, and I, shoot a lot of videos on my phone, a lot of long length videos as part of, well, my job. So if I can do it, then assuming you aren't going absolutely crazy with recording videos and photos, and unless you're consistent on keeping them all on your phone, then 64 or 128 should do you just fine. We do have an always-on display as well, which is very nice. We have raise to wake, so you raise up the phone and it unlocks. Android 12 has this feature where it can get colors from your wallpaper and automatically choose a color that fits. That's kind of cute. I like that. I still would much rather that Google give us better control over updates, because I specifically told this phone not to update a million times, and it just stopped giving me the option, and it forced the update when my fiance was using it. So that's part of the reason why I'm probably going to end up selling this phone, because I honestly just don't like Android 12. But realistically, that's where all Android is going, and that's not a reason to not consider the phone, if you ask me, because, again, it's fully updated on Android 12. Like, come on. I don't think Android 13 has come out yet. So this definitely is a killer deal. What other $60 phone are you going to be able to get that has this recent of a version of Android? Come on. So that is excellent as well. Now, as far as the build quality and the design, that's great too. This does have the squeeze feature, so you can squeeze it. And apparently that's going to search for that. So, okay. Google Pixel 3.
I found a few cell phone stores near you.
Okay, well, I don't want to find a cell phone store, but it did show me what a Pixel 3 is, which is good. It should have just said that's what you're holding. That would have been funny. But you can squeeze it for the Google Assistant, and that works really well. I honestly don't use it all that often. I find myself triggering it on accident, but you can adjust the sensitivity of it. In fact, if I go into the settings, so there's a good amount of settings in here, and I forgot exactly where the squeeze function is. It's probably under... Okay, well, I forgot where it is, but you can always search for it, since you do have the search option. So you can search, I think it's called Active Edge. And it is. So it's under System in Gestures, so you can change what this does, and you have the option to quickly open the camera and flip the camera for selfie. You can change the navigation buttons, which I really like, because I tried the gestures, and they work okay. Not too much of a fan. I went back to the navigation buttons. So whether you like the either form of navigation, the 2-button navigation is really stupid. There's no point in using that. Either use the gesture navigation or the 3-button navigation, but you have all those options. So however you want to use your phone, you can use it however you want to. You have the flip to shish option, which is where if you flip it over, it puts it on Do Not Disturb. Now, I never really used that because I would find myself triggering that on accident all the time. You can change what the power button does and all that. You have one-handed mode, which I never use because, again, this is the small phone. I can reach all the corners, no problem, and I usually use this without a case, but I mainly got a case just in case, no pun intended. So you've got plenty of options there. And of course the fingerprint for notifications is on. That's a great feature as well. So yeah, you can change a lot of other things in here in the accessibility functions and all this stuff, but yeah. So now that we're in here, we'll talk about the battery. So the battery on this, now again, the Pixel 3 XL is going to have a bigger battery, and it's going to have a better battery as a result, because that's just how it is. Smaller phone, smaller battery. But I will admit, the battery life on this has actually been pretty good. I expected the battery to be trash, especially for the price that I was getting it for. I expected it to have a junk battery in it, but it actually doesn't. The battery on this is pretty good. Is it as good as my Note 9? Of course not. But whenever I was using this, whenever I put my SIM card in this and I used this as my main phone to test the battery properly, I could get through the day no problems. I still had to plug in at the end of the day or put it on wireless charging because it does have both, thankfully. But that being said, I still had to charge it by the end of the day, but it can get you through a day no problems. Now, it's hard to say that for sure because when you're talking about a phone that's this old, batteries degrade differently depending on which unit you get, and you don't know what the other person did with the phone. So, depending on what Pixel 3 you get, your battery could be excellent or it could be trash. But the battery is capable of being excellent, and especially if you change it, it'll be great. Again, you gotta still set reasonable expectations. It is a small phone, but it can get you through the day, especially if you're the slightest bit careful with it. So battery on this is perfectly acceptable, and thankfully the Pixel 3 is the first generation that added wireless charging. So we have this very nice two-toned glass design, which I love the way it feels. Honestly, I love the way that the top part feels versus the bottom part more so, because it's very nice and smooth, and it feels perfectly fine. So yeah, the battery will depend on what Pixel 3 you happen to get, but charging on this is really good. You do have wireless charging, like I mentioned, and I actually do really like this two-tone design, although I actually prefer this very slick glass up here because it's actually pretty grippy. But this sort of textured part of the back, it does look nice. I do like the way it looks, but it can be a little bit slippery. But it's not a problem on this smaller Pixel 3. I kind of worry that it could be a problem on the XL. So if you have an XL, you might have to get a case for it in order not to drop it. But, of course, then it would be even bigger. So, not sure about the XL, but I'll talk about that whenever I review the XL at a later date. But as far as the standard Pixel 3, this two-tone back does look very nice. And this phone is actually really comfortable. Even though there's no, like, real curved edges, the back is curved just a little bit. And funnily enough, it's also tapered at the bottom. It doesn't want to show up on camera, but you can see it's tapered in a little bit at the bottom, but not at the top. And we also have a little microphone up here. On the side, we have nothing. On the bottom, we have the SIM card tray and our USB Type-C port. On the sides, we have the volume rocker and the power button, which is not my preferred location. I actually prefer the way that old Samsung phones used to do it. Like here on the Note 7, you can see we have two separated volume buttons and then a power button on the opposite side. This is my preferred way to use buttons. I think this way is a lot more comfortable, and you don't have to worry about mashing both buttons at the same time when you're trying to press one. Because I find myself sometimes trying to turn down the volume by pressing the volume up and then turning it up by pressing the power button. But that doesn't happen too often, and I did manage to get used to it. It's still not quite my preference, but hey, that's going to be your preference as far as whether or not you prefer the layout of these power buttons. Now, like I mentioned, the build quality of this is good, and I haven't dropped it, so I can't really say how much durability is, but I have seen some people break these in the past, so like any phone, you want to be sure not to drop it, and if you are worried about dropping it, you're going to want to get a case. I found this Spigen Neo Hybrid very pretty and looks great with the not pink color, so this is definitely a good way to protect the phone. But ideally you'd get the Pixel Genuine cases because those look very nice, but unfortunately whenever I bought this I couldn't find any for the Pixel 3 and I still can't find them. All the cases that I find are earmarked for the A series, not the standard Pixel 3 series. So that's a little unfortunate because those cases are really nice, but you can't find them. So, and if not, you can always get a Spigen or a UAG, one of the really good companies. I usually always recommend UAG, but I wasn't really wanting to pay that much for a case for a phone because that's like, you know, a good percentage of what I paid for the phone. So that's kind of the only downside of getting a phone so cheap, is that you almost don't want to spend a lot on protection because you spent so much to get the phone. Now that also means that you want to protect it because if you break it, it's not going to be cost effective to fix, so you want to prevent it from breaking in the first place. Although some people feel the opposite way, so that's just obviously up to you. So you could use it without a case because if you break it, it's only, you know, however many dollars, but you could also want to put a case on it because you don't want to go through the hassle. So of course that's up to you. If there is a 2018 flagship I'd use without a case, it would be the Pixel 3 because it is the cheapest, And if you break the screen on this, this is one of the easiest screens to replace. But I actually don't like the way the Pixel 3 comes apart because I prefer the way that Samsung phones do it, where you take off the back to get to the battery and all that, because it means if you replace the battery, you generally have to go in through the screen. But now that the back is glass, you can theoretically go in through the back and replace the battery that way. It's just not the preferred method, but you can do that. So if you break the back panel, it is easy enough to replace, and that's just fine. So, I've already talked about the display, I've already talked about sound, I've already talked about the battery and the build quality, and, that's going to be pretty much what there is for a phone. I already discussed the camera, which is excellent. The front-facing camera actually has 2 cameras. One thing that's kind of stupid about this phone is there's literally 2 front-facing cameras, and there's no face unlock, which doesn't make any sense to me, because you're telling me there's 2 cameras up there, and you couldn't use one of them to unlock the phone with my face? It's kind of stupid. I mean, you have the fingerprint sensor, but it would be nice to have both. I don't know why you would have to only get the fingerprint sensor, or if you get the Pixel 4, then you only have the face unlock, because there is no fingerprint sensor. It'd be nice if there was a Pixel that actually had both. And unfortunately, this doesn't have both, and I was very confused when I first got it, because I couldn't find the face unlock in the settings, because naturally, I thought it had it, because every 2018 phone has face unlock, except the Pixel 3. So if you really want face unlock, then this might not be the best option, but the fingerprint sensor works great, and that is, technically speaking, a better way to unlock your phone anyways. So you still have good ways to biometrically unlock your phone. So one quick thing to mention is that there's no headphone jack. So again, by modern standards, that's perfectly expected, but that is one thing you got to keep in mind. But you can get a Pixel adapter for it. In fact, I actually have one from an old Pixel box, so I've been using that to use my wired headphones, and it's been working just fine. So I will try to find adapters in the description, and if I can find one, I'll link it, because if you want to use wireless earbuds with this, you have to find some sort of USB-C adapter, or just use wireless. So you do have plenty of options there, but it would be nice if it had a headphone jack, but it's a little bit more tolerable on the smaller Pixel, because of course space is at a premium. So that is the Pixel 3. There isn't really much else to talk about, because after all, the main pillars of a phone are great on this. This nails a lot of the fundamentals. Sure, there are some complaints I could have with it. It'd be nice if it had face unlock, it'd be nice if it had a headphone jack, and it'd be nice if it had more storage configurations or a micro SD card slot. But overall, this is still an excellent phone, and there definitely isn't anything that I can complain about for the $60 price tag that I paid for it. So if you're looking for a $60 phone, now I'm not sure if the seller that I bought this from still has these in stock, but if they do, I will link them in the description, because obviously I had a great experience with mine. So if the seller that I bought this from still has them in stock, I'll put them in the description. And if not, then unfortunately you're just going to have to hunt around on eBay and try to find one yourself. Now you can get these from eBay, you can get these from Swap and a lot of other places. I usually buy my phones on eBay. Now this phone was advertised as being a grade C, if I remember correctly, yet there's not really much damage on it. The back is in perfect condition, the frame is in perfect condition. There was one little something that I thought was a dent on the top, but it's mysteriously gone now, so it must have rubbed off. But there's nothing on this frame, and like I said, I've never dropped this. One thing I will say is that this painted aluminum can get scuffed up by the USB-C port, because a lot of people will be very careless with the way they're trying to stick the port in, and they'll end up scraping off this paint and revealing the plastic underneath. So if you are worried about that, then definitely, check that, especially if you're buying one in person, check that, or if they have photos of the device itself, check that. Or if you just want to get the black one, so that way it would hide those imperfections anyways, you can do that as well, because you can see the plastic underneath is black. So that is pretty much that. That's pretty much the only other thing that you'd have to worry about, and that's not too bad. So again, even though this kind of thing would really bother me, because I've just been using wireless charging on this anyways, I haven't been looking at the port, so it hasn't been bothering me, especially with the case, because it covers it up even more, because I'd have to look specifically at it to see it. Now, one thing that's a little bit annoying to me coming from Samsung phones, because I've always been a Note user, is that my Samsung fast charging brick and my Samsung fast wireless chargers don't charge this at fast speeds. Now, that's not technically the phone's fault, but it is something to keep in mind, because if you buy this for as cheap as I got it for, it's probably not going to come with a charger. Now, you can get the Google Pixel chargers, I'm pretty sure. I haven't actually looked, but I'm pretty sure you can still find them. And, you know, it has the standard quick charge that was very popular back then, so it's not going to charge as quickly as the modern phones that have like 45 and 60 watt fast charging. But in my opinion, you don't really need that anyways. So it's not a super necessity. And even if you plug it in normally, it charges perfectly adequately. It's the kind of thing where, you know, if you wake up and you plug this in and it's almost dead and you're getting ready, you'll leave the door at about, you know, maybe 60%. So it really just depends on how long that takes for you, but you can certainly get around this battery, especially since the battery life itself is pretty good, at least on my unit. So that's a little something to keep in mind. You might have to buy the specific Pixel stand or Pixel chargers to get it to do the fast charge, which is kind of stupid, but a lot of manufacturers have their own standards anyways, so that's not necessarily to be unexpected. So, anyways, this was the full review of the Google Pixel 3, and yeah, so this is the smaller Pixel 3, so we'll do a little size comparison. It's the same size as an S3, but a little bit taller. It's a similar size to a G5, but again, a little bit smaller. Comparing it to a Note 4, you can see how big it is right there. Again, normal Pixel 3, not the XL. So it's a little bit smaller. Galaxy S6 Edge Plus. Galaxy Note 3, you can tell I have a lot of Galaxy phones. So you can see again, a little bit smaller. And Galaxy S7 Edge. Obviously this is in a case, so I probably put it up like that. A little bit small. So it's actually not that crazy small of a phone. It's not like an iPhone 12 mini or 13 mini or anything like that. It is bigger than that, but you know, it's in my opinion, for one-handed use, it's going to be the best. So if you really want a good one-handed phone, especially for this price range, get the Pixel 3. That's all there is to it. So anyways, this is Intellitech Mobile signing out with my review of the Google Pixel 3, my in-depth review after using this phone for, at this point, probably about a month or two. And yeah, I can definitely recommend this, especially for a good price. If you pay $60 for this, that's a killer deal, get it. Even if you pay like 80, pretty good. If you pay 100, maybe like open box or something, that could be pretty good too. And if you want a bigger size, of course, check out the 3XL, but you would have the notch if you do that. So if you don't like the notch and you don't mind the smaller size, this is an excellent phone to get, especially for the price range. It's going to be the best camera you're ever going to find. I know I've said that a million times, but it needs to be mentioned, because the cameras on most phones, even brand new $200 phones, are usually crap. So I think that's important to mention, especially if you're someone who's maybe wanting to start their own social media, or you're wanting to you want to start doing photography, or maybe start your own channel, something like that. You want to start something like that and have a good camera to do it, and maybe you don't have a lot of money to spend. This is a great option. So again, this is Intellitech Mobile signing out with my full review of the Pixel 3. This wholeheartedly gets my recommendation, especially for the price that I paid for it. And like I mentioned, anywhere from 80 to 100 bucks, depending on the condition, can be a great deal as well. Just make sure to test it, make sure you get a good battery, and buy it through a method where you have a means to return it in case there's a problem with it. Because some Pixel 3s have had really weird bugs where the phone will shut off and dial 911, which is not definitely something you want to have happen. It's not something too common. I was actually really worried it was going to happen with mine, but thankfully it didn't. But that's a really weird bug, so you're going to want to make sure that doesn't happen and make sure that your Pixel 3 doesn't have that problem before you commit to using it. So, or I should say before you run out of period to be able to send it back. So buy it through eBay or something like that where you have a return policy. I generally don't recommend buying phones from random people off the street, but a lot of people do it. So I guess if you do that, then buy it for a small enough amount of money that it's worth it if it doesn't work. So that's that. Anyways, this is Intellitech Mobile signing out. I'll see you guys in the next video, and I hope you all have a good one.